Okay, here we are with part 3 of legacy planning. Ken Krager again from Black Swan Financial Advisors. This is the third video that I'm doing around this legacy planning topic. I think it's super important, and this might be the most important video. Again, disclaimer. This video and every other video, everything on my website, please go to my website. You can get more resources there. Possibilities achieved. You can also get some other very valuable resources for families with special needs. And then Addie has her own little store that we're standing up. She sells freeze-dried goodies by It's Me Addie. So if you have never had any freeze-dried candy, you should give it a try. Again, for educational and informational purposes only. So part 3, talking about circumstances changing over time. And it's really important that when you get a trust that you revisit that and update it on a regular basis, not only for tax purposes and so forth, but because the circumstances change. And this is super important and likely has the biggest impact to the successful future of your disabled child. So there's a couple of things. Circumstances change. People have disagreements, and probably the biggest thing, one of the weirdest things, is that money changes people. Some people just become different people when there's a lot of money involved. So we've all seen and heard the stories of, the parents die and the siblings get into some conflict. And I've even seen personally, I've seen siblings steal and destroy assets and steal stuff from their other brothers and sisters and stuff. And we always hope and think that our kids aren't going to be that way, but that's the extreme case. But the reality is that circumstances change, and even if it doesn't get that bad, things can happen that can have an adverse effect on the future of your child with special needs. So I'll give you some examples. These are real life examples, some of them in my own family. But for example, when we were younger, I have 2 other kids. I have 3 kids, a girl and a boy, and then Addie is a girl. So 2 girls and a boy. And Addie's older sister spent most of her time. She spent a lot of time with Addie when Addie was growing up until she went to college and everything. But just a simple thing like Shelby is married, and actually her brother is also married, and they have their own family and they have their own children, and they all get along great with Addie. Addie loves them, they love Addie. But a few years ago, Shelby and her family had to move to northern Idaho for college, living in a small apartment. And so we have a trust, and we've outlined guidance in there, like who we recommend to be the guardian, who's the trustee. We split up responsibility, but we also have a third person in there, happens to be my wife's sister, so that she can be a tiebreaker. So Shelby and her family is up in Idaho, and they're going to school, and the situation, they were really tight with resources and everything. And if we would have died, and Addie, it just wouldn't have been feasible probably for Addie to go live with her sister at that time. And then Callan, and he has his own family, but he happened to be living in Arizona where we live, and it just would have been easier for Addie to go there. So hopefully in the best situations, your child can live with different siblings and have a great experience, but the circumstances change, and you don't know about your children's spouses, their other children. Maybe they have children with disabilities and they have their own burdens. So I think the main thing is that if you do some pre-planning and set up a trust and you talk to your kids about it and you talk to everybody about it and you put some rules in place so that everybody just knows what's going to go on when you pass on. And think about that probate thing again, right? So Addie's an adult now. She has her own friends. We want to get her into her own, where she can live on her own in her own place, maybe have a roommate and all that kind of stuff. And so what we might not remember is that our disabled child also has their own life. And when we pass on as parents and we pass on, that could be a huge disruption to, for example, if we would have passed on and Addie would have had to go live with her sister up in Idaho, she wouldn't have her friends, she wouldn't, have all those things, right? So anyway, that's another thing. And then for a few minutes, let's just talk about the money. Because hopefully you're leaving a significant amount of resources and money so that your loved one with special needs can have a great life and do the things that they want. So your other children might be at different levels of financial stability or ability or whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're young families probably. So again, you just don't know what people do when they, when money is involved. But even just simple things like Addie likes to travel and she loves Disney cruises and, so just simple things like, well, what might happen when we pass on and Addie goes and lives with one of her siblings and she wants to be able to go on vacations and stuff, and she has, this trust, hopefully would be able to pay for some of that, but, the trust might not be rich enough to pay, the whole family's trips or whatever. So, I mean, it's just, there's lots of things that can change. And again, you just don't know what the brothers and sisters are, their spouses, their family situation might be, what their financial situation might be. Another example, this is another case, for example, is just housing. So there's a case that I know where a discussion among the siblings about housing. And so one of the, they were talking about it. Well, if their sibling came and lived with them, their house isn't big enough. And so now we got into this discussion about, well, the house isn't big enough. The trust is going to have to give me $100,000 to do an addition on my house or whatever. Well, that's pretty expensive housing expenses for, one person living in one room. And, depending on how it was it would be handled, does the trust become a part owner in that home or whatever? How can we handle it? And so the discussion actually went on to be more like, well, Addie should contribute a monthly expense to her housing expenses, say $1,000 a month or whatever. And if needed, the sibling that was going to take care of her and she was living with, they could use that as additional income and qualify. And if they wanted to go do an addition on their house, then they could do that. And then there would be no question about, well, does the trust own part of the house now because the trust, paid $100,000 to remodel a $300,000 house. So, those are the things that you need to talk about, and those are things that you can spell out in your trust. Now, if the trust is really rich, you might say if it has a lot of assets, then I don't see a problem with the trust maybe spending money to add living quarters to several of the siblings' homes, guest house or whatever, place for the child to live. But you can't, you don't want to deplete the trust for those resources have to last for 30, 40 years maybe. And so it's just a good idea if you have a trust, if you plan for some of this, talk to the family and the siblings and everything. It's probably better, in my opinion anyway, that if you have at least 3 people identified in the trust as guardians, trustees, and that would make decisions, you should have an odd number so that you can break a tie. And so anyway, those are just some of the concerns and some of the things that you should think about. And it's great if you feel that, hey, Joe's brothers and sisters are going to just take care of him when we're gone. It might work out and it would be great, but at the very least, it would add a lot of burden to the other siblings. They would have, if there's no guidance, the nice thing about a trust is you can clarify what you want for your child. And it's interesting, the siblings, they don't necessarily know in detail about their brother or sister and what they want and what they like to do and all that kind of stuff. So, that's just a big thing. And then just think about it too. If you don't have a trust, then you're going to go through probate. So think about that. Back to my daughter's situation where they were living in Idaho, and say, for example, that we died and we didn't have a trust, and our estate went into probate because we have more than $75,000 and we have a house. And so our estate would have been tied up for a year or more. And Addie needs to move somewhere, right? And they need money. And, they're not going to just be able to take care of her, based out of the resources that they have living as students, trying to go to school full time and everything, and move Addie and provide for Addie's living expenses and stuff like that. And all your assets are tied up in probate. That's going to be a huge problem. And you don't want that burden on your children, your other children. So anyway, some thoughts to think about and things to consider. And please contact me. I'm more than happy to discuss this whole topic and come up with the best solution and the best plan for you guys, for your family. Again, for educational and informational purposes only. Go to my website, go to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. I would love you to subscribe and look for many more educational videos and reports. And I'm going to put together a little guide to legacy planning for family with special needs. For most of the video series I will also do some kind of guide or document. So thanks a lot. We'll see you later. Bye.